Hello there and welcome to the literal east coast of Canada. I've come here today, sit down here in the beautiful sunny weather. I might even have to put on my sunglasses to talk to you about teaching beginners. Whether you're doing your TEFL, your CELTA, maybe you're an experienced teacher or maybe you're a new teacher and you're looking to brush up on your skills when it comes to teaching beginners, this is the video for you. Now, if you're new here, my name is Fergus Fadden and I'm a CELTA teacher trainer, I'm a TEFL teacher trainer, and indeed I'm a coach helping people like you achieve your goals, whether that be on a CELTA or TEFL or indeed it be taking those next steps in your career. Check out, there's a link in the description below where you can check out my website where I offer courses and consultations and materials to help you achieve those goals. So let's get into it. Let's talk about this teaching beginners. So the very first thing you need to have very, very clear in your mind is the aim of your lesson, the outcome of your lesson. Now, I talk to a lot of people about the types of wording that can really help you there. So if we think about the word teach and learn, these things are hard to measure, but if you put in action verbs, so by the end of the lesson, students will have practiced. By the end of the lesson, students will have spoken about. By the end of the lesson, students will have used 5 phrases to ask questions about directions, for example. If you put in this very specific action-based language, then you can measure your progress and the student's progress by the end of the lesson. And this is going to help you notice not only the student's success, but your own success as a teacher. So when it comes to teaching beginners, the next really big thing there is to develop rapport and engage your students. So at these lower levels, it's not about doing a comedy show or doing a big act or anything like that. But it's really about, using your body, using gestures, and just being an engaging kind of personality when it comes to your lessons, because you're going to be relying on all of those other kind of non-linguistic cues that students will need to understand what you want from them, things beyond the words, because again, these are beginners, these are complete beginners. So using gestures, using a kind of charismatic approach is going to make a big difference. Now, one of the things just to mention here when I'm talking about using gesture and being engaged in developing rapport, just be careful not to slip into like baby language or, treating these adult learners too much like children. Of course, slow down, be, maybe a little over the top in some of your gestures, but remember, they are adults and they can still sense if you are babying them, as it were. Okay, the next thing is, really thinking about who these learners are, and you don't want to assume anything really at the complete beginner level. Maybe at the intermediate, upper intermediate, advanced learners, you can assume that they know things like, basic set of vocabulary, that they know their prepositions, that they know their articles, etc. But at these beginner levels, you want to assume nothing. It's like that old saying, don't assume because it makes an ass out of you and me. So really, this is going to inform a lot how you speak and engage with your learners if you assume that they really know nothing. And this really ties into the next big tip, and that's around teacher talking time, or TTT as it's often referred to. You got to keep that TTT as low as possible. In fact, create some silence. Again, using gestures, you don't need to describe everything. In fact, the more that you describe, the more that you explain, the more confused that your learners are going to be. So keep that TTT even lower than it would be with other levels. I would say keep it on the order of 20% as opposed to 30% or 40%, maybe we might aim at higher levels. Okay, so the next big tip I want to give you is be patient with your learners. Realize that you're going to go from just teaching them some words and they can't make sentences to maybe some statements, and then from the statements, maybe you can get questions, and from the questions, then you can start to have dialogues. You know, I really try to keep, if I go back to my first tip around my aims for my lesson, I really try to keep the language very, very attainable in the lesson. So I'm going to aim to teach them maybe 3 statements and 3 questions in a 1-hour lesson. That might be what would be appropriate there for those kinds of true beginner learners. The next really big thing is use visuals. So I'm, teaching about nature. What is this thing? And like literally let them see the video or a photograph of the sea and the sky and the clouds. Although there's not really any clouds here today, etc. But use those visuals. Use realia. Here I've got my car keys. Like if you're teaching, keys, use the actual realia. Now, when it comes to realia, don't feel that I give an extreme example. If you're teaching elephants, you're not going to bring your pet elephant into the classroom. But when it comes to realia, the real things, just look at what's around you. You don't need to kind of go over the top, because first of all, it's not practical. It might kind of create false expectations with your learners. But use realia, use visuals where possible. Use, draw on the board. You don't need to be Picasso, but something to convey the meaning. Keep those explanations to an absolute minimum, almost non-existent, I would say, when it comes to teaching beginners. This is a word, I recently made a video on it here on my channel, and it's a word you'll hear more and more all the way through the levels, but especially at the beginner levels. You want to elicit. You want to kind of guide the students along with you. Get them to come along with you. Teasing out of them. Is it this? Is it that? What's that? Asking very, basic questions, but to try and tease it out of the learners. Give the learners opportunities. If they have literally no language, give them marker sentences, get them to repeat things, get them to notice, get them to combine visuals with what they see in terms of the word and what they hear in terms of your pronunciation. Elicit, elicit, elicit. So another point when it comes to teacher talking time is also about how we grade our language and the speed of our language, but crucially, maintain the natural tones of your language. So you are going to have to slow down quite a bit, and you are going to, as we mentioned before, keep that teacher talking time very appropriate. Keep your language graded, and a great way to think about grading your language is don't use any more language outside of the language, the target language that you are teaching for that lesson. So if you're teaching days of the week, 90% of what comes out of your mouth are going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, week, day, and that's going to be about it. So keep the language graded to where the learners are, slow down, but remain natural. If you're on a course like CELTA, one of the criteria that you're graded on is to provide your students with natural models of language. So you can slow down. I speak fast when I'm making YouTube videos, but I speak more slowly when I'm working with my beginners. And that's completely fine, but I want to make sure that I'm giving those natural models of language all the time. In terms of the content, what you actually teach with your beginner learners, I'm going to say it's going to focus more on functional language. Now check out in my YouTube channel here, I have a video on what is functional language, but very quickly and broadly speaking, it's going to be chunks of language. So you might take a phrase like, I'm gonna do this later on, I'm gonna do that later on, I'm gonna have dinner, I'm gonna go and visit my friend, etc. So you might give them gonna, I'm gonna, and then add the kind of variable there. Or maybe, would you mind if I open the door? Would you mind if I close the window? Etc. You might give this kind of chunk of language to get learners up and running kind of that bit more quickly. Now that leads into another big tip. Use those contractions as much as possible, and you can use what's called the finger method to give the contractions. So you might say, I am going to, and you might say, I'm, like show this contraction. I'm going to, gonna, I'm gonna. So it's I am going to, I'm gonna. So that's what we could call the finger method, and use those contractions as much as possible. It's going to help your learners sound natural that much quicker. My last 2 points when it comes to teaching beginners, the first one is drilling and the second one is error correction. Okay, so when it comes to drilling, how do we do drilling? Well, first of all, we're going to choral drill. So let's say I'm teaching coast. Okay, everybody, coast. And then I'll do individual drilling. Coast, 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 coast. And as I'm doing that individual drilling, I want to make sure then to correct. If a student is saying coast, coast, and I said, nah, no, it's not coast, it's coast. So work on it, but don't overdo it with your learners. You don't want to create any kind of like negative feeling there. So give them like 2 or 3 error correction. Maybe 3 would be the absolute limit. I tend to stick to about 2. And if they're still saying coast, if they're still kind of getting it wrong, say, okay, you're improving, but keep working on it. So don't confirm to them that their wrongness is in fact correct. Let them know, but then don't overdo it. And then that does lead into the last point. You must do error correction. Now, if your students are doing controlled practice, you want to do what's called on-the-spot correction, because the point of a controlled practice is for the learners to focus on accuracy, getting it just right. So there's no real point in letting them go on and not get it right. Whereas if they're doing a free practice, if they're asking questions, responding to questions, asking, responding, maybe what you might want to do is sit down with a notebook, take notes, and then provide some error correction after the fact so that you don't interrupt their fluency. Okay, that's it for this video on how to teach beginners. I hope that you've found it useful. There is a link in the description of this video below if you want e-learning courses to help you with your assignments on CELTA, if you want consultations with me to help you be successful with those courses, or maybe think about what I call Path B, taking that next step, going beyond English language teacher to get into things like teacher training, coaching, learning and development, becoming an instructional designer, all of these things that I have done in my own career here, then check out that link. You'll find lots of information and even the ability to talk to me if that's something that makes sense for you. Okay, I'm going to get back to enjoying the coastline here. It's an absolutely beautiful day here in Canada. And when we get beautiful days, you gotta make the most of them because our winters are pretty tough. So expect some videos in the coming month from a Canadian winter. But with that, everybody, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful day wherever you may be in the world. And bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.